Welcome to the midweek edition of the news in Africa and the world. The trial of Sudan's ousted President Omar al-Bashir over the 1989 coup that led him to power has been postponed to September 15 from the initial day, Tuesday 2nd of September. The session was held amid tight security and aired on television as Bashir and other co-accused regime figures stood behind bars in the courtroom. The presiding judge declared the case was adjourned after procedural questions and debate about the COVID-19 precautions in the courtroom. Omar al-Bashir stayed in power for 30 years before being overthrown by months of unprecedented youth-led street demonstrations in April 2019 amid a drowning economic system. The trial comes as Sudan's joint civilian-military transitional government is pushing a wave of political and social reforms and on Monday agreed a peace deal with most, if not all, rebel groups. Tunisia is welcoming a new government after the technocrat cabinet of Prime Minister Hichem Mechichi survived the vote of confidence. The new government, which required 109 of the 217-member body to vote in favor, eventually passed with 134 votes. The country will have a new government following the third confidence vote in less than a year of political division and turmoil that has set the country through its recent history. Mechichi, in his speech in parliament, said the new government will address the economic and social situation at a time of crisis. The task ahead of the government is significant. The threat posed by the global coronavirus, which appeared to be abating following an early lockdown, is again on the rise, though numbers remain comparatively small in global terms. Many political parties have felt sidelined by Mechichi's choice to circumvent Tunisia's fractured politics by selecting a cabinet of outside technocrats. Tunisians are hoping that the new government will settle the current political imbalance. Malawi's new president Lazarus Chakwera has of Tuesday reappointed an army general sacked by his predecessor Peter Mutharika after his troops protected demonstrators contesting the former leader's controversial re-election, known as General Vincent Nundwe. Chakwera, while reversing the decision on Tuesday, said sacking him was not procedural. Violent protests rocked the country in May last year following the controversial re-election of Peter Mutharika. The election was later annulled and fresh ones ordered within 5 months. General Nundwe at the time held a news conference that the army had a role to maintain constitutional order. Tuesday's decision, therefore, was to restore justice to the operations of the Malawi Defense Force. President Lazarus Chakwera said he has also announced he will soon convene a meeting of the Defense Council to discuss the appointment of the new deputy commander of the Malawi Defense Force and other key positions. After being closed for 5 months due to the coronavirus pandemic, Senegal's universities began reopening their doors on Tuesday. Looking at the case of Cheikh Anta Diop University of Dakar, the country's biggest university, the over 78,000 students were split into 3 segments. While some will attend classes in person and on rotation, others would do online classes. Students and the various institutions are called upon to adhere to COVID-19 safety rules, which includes social distancing, mandatory wearing of face masks, and regular washing of hands. The country, according to data from the WHO, has over 13,500 cases of the virus and 250 recorded deaths. Other institutions are set to open later in the week out of the country's 8 universities. From Africa, we now go to the European Union, where its leaders have reached an agreement on the EU's 1.8 trillion euros budget after a swift summit back in July. But before any funds can be allocated, MEPs' consent will be needed. The battle over that got underway on Tuesday when members of the European Parliament came up with a negotiating strategy. They want to convince European leaders and Brussels to 1. Boost EU programs that have previously suffered cuts, 2. Introduce new sources of revenue, and 3. Crucially, to link funding to a country's respect for the rule of law. The third point is the main subject of this agreement. It will be difficult to get the 27 EU government to agree with the setup of a mechanism that will freeze funds for countries that violate rule of law principles. The EU's budget will need to be approved by national parliaments before coming into force on New Year's Day 2021. In France, the trial of the 2015 January terrorist attacks on French magazine Charlie Hebdo opens in a Paris court this Wednesday after 5 years of investigations and a delay due to the coronavirus pandemic. Over the next few months, 14 suspects, including 3 in absentia, who may be dead, will be tried at a courthouse in northwest Paris amid tight security. The hearings are set to reopen a traumatic chapter in France's history, which occurred on January 7 that year when 2 brothers stormed into Charlie Hebdo's Paris offices, killing 12 people, including a police officer, outside the premises. The trial, scheduled to start before summer, was adjourned due to the current global pandemic and will accommodate fewer observers in the courtroom due to social distancing measures. It will be one of only a dozen trials to be filmed in France due to the judicial importance and emotion stirred by the attacks. President Donald Trump on Tuesday during his visit in Kenosha came down squarely on the side of law enforcement, blaming domestic terror for the violence in Wisconsin and making no nod to the underlying cause of anger and protest over the shooting of another black man by police. Trump declared the violence anti-American. Crowds lined the barricade street where the president motorcade passed, with Trump supporters on one side and Black Lives Matter supporters on the other side, yelling one another from a distance and sometimes tense face-to-face encounters. Under heavy security, Trump visited a burned-out store where he told the owners he will help them rebuild. He lauded the law enforcement unit that quelled the violent protest in Kenosha. Thanks for watching, and do so again if you can. Until we meet, do take care and stay safe.